Welcome everybody, good evening. Welcome to Pakhuis de Zwijger. Thank you very much for coming on this sunny day. It's good the sun is almost down, so we won't feel too bad about it. My name is Charlie. I'm a program maker here, but tonight I will be introducing you to the speakers. I wouldn't really call it moderation that much because most of the work is going to be done by the speakers and by all of you. In case you didn't notice, in the second half, we're going to work with all of you, so you can all share your knowledge and experience and be part of this evening. This is an event in a series that we started in collaboration with the AMS Institute. That stands for Advanced Metropolitan Solutions. And it's an institute here in Amsterdam which combines the top scholars from Wageningen, Delft, and MIT in Boston. And together with AMS, we organize a series called AMS Science for the City, with the idea that instead of doing all this wonderful research in an academic setting, it's also good to now and then get out of your tower and connect with society and hear from them and test your research and your results on their knowledge and their insights. So that's why we started this series. This is already the 9th episode. And for this specific event, it's not only AMS, but also the HVA, so the University of Applied Science here in Amsterdam, that has been our core partner in setting up this evening. So yeah, you're going to hear a bit more about AMS and their focus on the food system in cities and the research that they have done. But before I'm gonna tell you what we're going to do tonight, I'm actually quite curious to see who you are and what brought you here. So if you could raise your hand, who here is a student? From maybe Wageningen or Delft? Wageningen? No, good. Foreign blood in the group. Who is a policymaker who works for the municipality? Yeah. Who is just a very interested and smart and intelligent citizen who is not part of very good. Yeah, this was a smart question for the smart people. Who is something that I didn't mention in work-wise, like we could go many ways, but work-wise, who has a different kind of background, not policy or academic or, yeah? Okay, then. You're gonna be my special guest. Tell me, please. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Who are you?
I'm Volkmar. I'm here together with my dad who invited me.
That's great.
I'm an event maker in the city, so I do several music events.
Great.
Yeah, so not much to do with food.
No. But you came here because your father invited you, or also because you're interested to learn more?
Yeah, interested to learn more, and I think I should come to the Pakhuis de Zwijger a little bit more often.
That's a really good answer. Thank you all for being here. So I'm gonna be brief. Hi, welcome. Basically, like I told you before, so we have two parts. The first part consists out of presentations. So a bunch of scientists are going to share their research and share their fascination for why are they looking at this issue of food and cities. And in the second part, we're gonna divide the experts and all of you who are also experts in your own kind over these tables and look at specific challenges and themes within the broader issue of making a food-proof city, or how can you understand the food system that we have, that we should have in an urban context. We have also a focus on data. What is the data that we have when it comes to challenges that are related to the food system? What is the data that we don't have? So what kind of insights, but also lack of knowledge do we have, and how can we build that up towards a more holistic, well informed um, overview of what's going on in our city, food wise related. Um, that's it for now. I'll be back every now and then to introduce the next topic. Throughout the entire night, if you have a question, if you have a comment, please raise your hand. We'll try and find a moment for it, but please do wait till there's a mic because we have a live stream, so people who are watching from somewhere else can also hear you. If you need to go to the bathroom, it's right there. That was the basic things. I'm now going to give the floor to one of the first speakers, Arjen Spijkerman. There you go. Arjen is part of the research and valorization team and a program developer of Vital City for the AMS Institute. Arjen, the floor is yours. Do you want my mic or do you want to stand here?
Yeah, maybe I can get the mic so I can walk around a little bit.
Welcome to.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Arjen Spijkerman. Thank you for coming, and we have a very heavy competition with this warm weather, but thanks so much for joining. I work for the AMS Institute, and I would like to give a short introduction what this AMS Institute is about. And one of the strategic programs we are working on in this AMS Institute is about the food system. As Charlie already mentioned, it's quite challenging, having this more system approach. So I would like to introduce the topics about that. But first, the AMS Institute. We are a knowledge institute, and we exist of our core partners, knowledge partners, which is Wageningen, Delft, and MIT. And the initiative of this AMS Institute came 5 years ago. The city was in need of a more technical institute, which was assisting the city of Amsterdam, or better to say the metropolitan area of Amsterdam, in how to make the metropolitan area climate adaptive. Circular economy, what does it mean? What are the benefits for the city of Amsterdam? Energy transition, how can we really start this transition? Well, all technical aspects where you need a knowledge institute. And of course, we are not doing that by ourselves. We work, of course, closely with all our knowledge partners in Amsterdam and other parties and stakeholders. So the AMS Institute our role is to bring all the knowledge from these core partners, bring it to Amsterdam, and make it very applied and accessible, so we really can work on to improve the quality of life in Amsterdam. We mostly work with research projects. One of the research projects is what we're going to work, which the next speaker will introduce. But we're also working, we recently started with a 2-year master track. It's called MADE, and we're going to educate a new generation of city engineers, but we also provide them with entrepreneurial skills, so we also try to stimulate them to set up their own business. So let's jump to food. If we talk about the food system, we all have probably another idea of a food system, but from our institute, we try to visualize it in this way. You can do it, of course, in many ways. We have a food production, food system elements. Food is being processed. We import all the food by logistic into the city. We consume it. Waste is being generated, and we try to valorize this waste. Well, a beautiful circular model, but you also, of course, you need to do it on all different skill levels, from neighborhood till North Europe level. But we can see this food, so this our strategic program is quite interesting, because the food system, it's connected with all these urban challenges I just introduced. It's about reducing food logistics. It's about creating a circular economy. So it's all linked within these urban challenges. So here we can see that we already started with some food-related projects. This is our project landscape, where our food projects have all different teams. Some are about circular economy, some are about logistics, the valorization of waste. But a very important component in our AMS Institute is this AMS Data Hub. Because loads of data and information and methodologies are being generated. So we need to store them to make them also accessible for other research, but also the rest of the Amsterdam society. And the interesting thing is that all these data sets we are gathering and we combine them in this data hub, you can create synergies. And then you not need to invent the wheel every time, but you really build on all this data network and data sets. With our program, we try to get better insight of the food system in order to work on a food resilient metropolitan food system, in order to make effective policy, to work towards a sustainable transition of this sustainable food system. Well, one of the first projects of a very important project is the evidence-based food system design, and that's where the next speaker will talk about with Melika. And so it's now the floor is yours. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my name is Melika Leefeld, and I work as a project leader and researcher at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences at the Urban Technology Group, and I work also on sustainable urban food systems. And as Arjan talked about, together with AMS and Wageningen and Flevo Campus, many partners, and also Aeres, University of Applied Sciences, important to mention. We work on this evidence-based food system design project. And well, why is this important? Arjan already talked about it, but I want to elaborate a bit on that. I think understanding the food system is important because what we eat and how and where production takes place and how it is transported has an enormous impact on our planet and on our lives. It influences and is influenced by, I think, by a lot of issues that people tend to consider as of importance for society. It makes a difference whether we eat more processed food or more meat or less meat, or of course it makes a difference whether we import our food from far away or that we produce it nearby. And of course transportation also makes a difference. Yes, on the largest, it makes a difference, and it has an impact on all kinds of societal problems, like of course the climate change and soil quality, biodiversity issues related to all the planetary boundaries we are already reaching or exceeding. What we eat has a lot of impact on health, of course, and well-being, and yeah, how nice our cities are to live and to, well, recreate or to be around is also very much dependent on how we transport our stuff and how we have spatially developed our cities. Give they room to a lot of cars or more to pedestrians? But if there's a lot of room for pedestrians, maybe at some points during the day, well, the pedestrian area is not so nice because it's full of cars that want to bring food to all kinds of restaurants and shops. So it is important to think about all these things, how they are related, and to understand these relationships if we want to work on health and well-being in cities or on our spatial quality. Why? And the last part, why is this so important? Well, we know that right now we have to become able to feed increasingly an increasing population worldwide. And as urbanization proceeds, we will also, well, we know that people tend to start to eat more dairy products, more meats, more processed food, etc. And all these things increase even the problems. So we need to find solutions to that, and they can give us a lot of economic chances, probably also, and societal chances. Because if we change our system, maybe we can have nicer places to, well, to be, to recreate, and to be around, and yeah, find people back together in a garden or whatever, and yeah, people meeting each other there. So what we do in the evidence-based food system design project is really we think, okay, there's so many related issues to the food system, and we need to understand these relationships. And so understanding relationships starts with a good knowledge and good understanding, good knowledge of all the layers, all the aspects of the food system. And we found that actually we are lacking a lot of data on that. So we have a broad idea of many issues, but not specific data on a geographic scale. And that's about data on the food production. So what is produced, and also the potential use of land around the city and in the metropolitan area for food production, the food consumption, where are these consumers located, but also what are their preferences for consumption. And then, very important, where are all the food actors located in the city or in the entire area, from farm to fork. So we are interested in knowing where are all the farmers located, the wholesalers, the retail locations, the cafes, the restaurants, the hotels, everywhere where someone buys or sells food, where food goes around. Knowing these exact locations, we think that's important, because then you get a better insight. And then lastly, the layer of the flows, because then it really becomes interesting what happens between all these players in food system. How are they related to each other with flows of foods, to say. So the core of our project is to create maps of the different layers, and to enable us to combine these maps, because also that is some problem. If you want to analyze the food system, there's a lot of data out there, but the data is often not compatible with each other. So it is already a big work to be done to be able to combine maps and to get data from different sources together. So that's the first step. And what I can show and want to show today is our first things, or our first maps we've been creating with that. So please take that not as rocket science, but we understand that this is work in progress. So as we have combined different first map I show, different data, the first is just to show all the food players and the food actors. This is work mainly done by Jessica van Bossem, my colleague over there. And and also the urban analytics team of the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. Well, these are snapshots in real. These maps are clickable. You can zoom in, zoom out. You can have you can zoom, for example, on a specific area or spot in Amstelveen or Aalsmeer to really understand a specific place, but you can also see the entire region. And it is different to it is a different way of working than a lot of other work that is, well, has been done or is currently on the way to be done in other regions, where you see that a lot of data is gathered just as a one-time exercise, but our map tend to be to be updated quite automatically, or how to say it. We try to make that not very labor-intensive work, so write the codes for that, so that you can also see, not only have a clickable map at this point in time, but also in several years' time be able to look back and to see how things develop with respect to the food players. Other example is the industry, the food industry and food retail with the supermarkets. They are the light blue dots, and the specialty stores are in dark blue. And another thing in the map, there's all kinds of extra information on how many supermarkets there are in the different categories. And if you click on one of the dots, you can even see some extra information on that specific dot. And so here you have also a wholesale, and then you see the concentration of, in Amsterdam specifically, we have the concentration of wholesale in the Amsterdam Food Center. Well, that's clear. And for me, I look at it a bit from a logistics point of view. I immediately think, when I see a concentration like that, how does all the cars or trucks come to that location, and how does delivery take place from that location to the entire city center? So I think for me it works like that. Seeing a map immediately gives you a starting point for asking questions about what you see on that map, and we hope that will also be the case for maybe others working in the food on the food topic. But of course, they might need some more extra data then. Well, now a next step is then to really use the data we have collected for analysis of the food system, because this is only dots on the map. It can generate some questions, but it only starts really to be interesting if you have an aerial analysis. For example, you see the hotel and the catering industries here. They get also a lot of deliveries from the food center. We have seen that is in the western part of the city center. An interesting question here may be what the logistics consequences are of the municipal goal to give more room to pedestrians and cyclists and trams, especially in the inner city and the areas surrounding it. How will then deliveries be carried out? I think that's an important question to ask. And then maybe the question also comes to mind, maybe we need another logistics center, like food center somewhere else, a hub area, to efficiently be able to get the deliveries into these neighborhoods that may not be that open anymore to cars. Well, these are questions we hear a lot around, but again, if you want really to answer that question, how can you work with that from a logistics point of view, and what will be the consequences of a political decision to give room to pedestrians and cyclists? you really need data, and not only on the dots. Actually, you need more data. You need to know how often are the different types of cafes and restaurants how often do they get deliveries, and where do their deliveries come from, etc. Well, this is the type of data we try to collect right now to add these data, and then, well, hopefully we can at a later point in time also make maps on that, so that you really can start to make predictions with that. And Renzo, I think you can tell us much more about the possibilities of that with such data. And also in the second part, we are very curious to hear of maybe you, if you are interested in the logistics topic, what kind of data you think need to be added to be able to answer the questions on logistics and get the right insights. Another type of map we didn't work on it in our project, but Bob Geldermans of the Repair Project, who knows more about that, is organic waste related to food. So the food waste, and also here it's very needed to start to collect that, do something with it. The municipality has, I think, from the national government has said municipalities should diminish their waste, their general waste. So they in Amsterdam, it's very important that we start to collect or do something with our organic waste. Also, the Port of Amsterdam is interested in using waste, for example, to regain phosphate out of it as a kind of new business for the port area. But again, okay, there seems to be chances to use that waste, but if you want to do that, you need to know more about where this waste is located, how much it is, what quality it has. So again, data, we think, on a very precise level is needed, because without it, you cannot start to make any business case. You cannot start to make the calculations and think about what is the best way to do that. So this is also a topic we are very curious about your ideas. Another way of starting to analyze based on our data is to translate the dots into information on areas, and then you can, for example, use that for ideas on health issues in the cities. It's often said that health issues, so obesity or overweight, has a relation with the food landscape, so the availability of different types of food in a neighborhood. Well, so a first thing would be interesting to make pictures of this food landscape. That's what we tried here. And then, of course, you can also start as a next step, say, well, we give points to different types of cafes or restaurants or fast food, and say, well, positive points for very healthy shops or where the food is very healthy that is available, and negative points where it is not so healthy, and then show a map of Amsterdam and look where the healthiest places are. And then again, this is only a starting point. A next step could be, well, how is this related then to overweight problems? Is there a relation or not? And probably then, again, more and more information is needed. So that is a topic we'd like to discuss later on the table on health, to get your opinion and ideas about what would be interesting data to add to maps like this to make them really useful for policy making and understanding the food system. And then a last one, and I think one I like very much. Oh, I forgot to say that these maps are all made by Caspar Aeres of AMS. I had to mention him. So thanks, for Casper. Yeah, last example is I liked also very much is the idea of using that information on the food system for to understand the consequences of different spatial developments. And there we come also to the Marineterrein, on which we will talk a bit more this evening, especially as just as an example, as to have some substance or a specific area makes it a bit easier to talk about it. Spatial development like the Marineterrein, but we also will have probably the ideas are in the air. I'm not sure how sure they already are, but the idea of the port city area development, where there will be a large extra part of Amsterdam being created. Well, all these ideas, if you develop a part of the town, you also develop a food system in that area, and it depends on what the logistics and the health issues, etc. really can differ depending on what will be there. More restaurants or more hotels, or just more companies, and more a working area or a shopping area. Well, what we have tried to do here is to think about different types of activities may have different logistics characteristics. And if you translate that into a kind of dashboard where you can just say, well, I put shops here, I've put that on very low, say, well, we will have 2 shops in this area, and only some companies, only 2, but we will have a lot of hotels and cafes and restaurants. What will then happen? Well, we have a lot of food deliveries, of course, because that's where food is eaten. And if you change that and say, well, we will have more like a company or working area with lots of companies, not so many hotels, not so many shops, well, you see immediately a huge change in what the amount of deliveries will be. And last, if you have andere kant op, if you have a lot of shops, and just to give some examples of the idea we had with dashboards that we could create with our data, and the idea of that may be helpful to that. It may give you helpful insights in what consequences you are actually planning or creating with a certain spatial development. And again, also here we are curious about your ideas. What kinds of dashboards and information would be helpful when you think about spatial development in the city, of the city? So again, this is also just work in progress, no rocket science. We didn't make very profound categories of the with the logistics characteristics. So it's just to show what a dashboard could look like, could be. Okay, I think I need to stop here. This is it. This is just to give you some idea of all the types of information and knowledge and insights we can get out of our data. So that's it.
Thank you, Melika. Before we continue, I'm just curious, do you have any questions or any comments? Is there anything you would like to share? I see you. Yeah. Could you tell me who you are? Where you from?
Yeah, I'm Sean. I work for Circle Economy here in Amsterdam, and I was just curious about, I guess, the dashboard that you created and the data that you use. Are they based on kind of assumptions of different kinds of stores and the kinds of deliveries and pickups, or is it also based on like real-time information from, for example, the logistics companies and the waste management companies, etc.? Or is it kind of just like the best guess of what's what's there.
Where do you get your data from? Is actually the question. Yeah.
And we start with general data points.
In that sense, it's also directly related to this question that you keep on coming back to. What kind of data do we also need? Like, what is still missing? So, yeah. Great. Any other questions or comments, maybe? Then we're going to continue because we've got a lot coming up yet. So, like Melika just explained, there are several layers, and within all those layers, also several themes that are related to this issue. And later during this workshop, we're gonna look more specifically with all of you in different groups at those themes. But we're gonna get a short introduction to one of them. And that's going to be done by Renzo Akkerman, Associate Professor in Operations, Research and Logistics at the University of Wageningen. Renzo, I think you're going to take us into the world of logistics and how we can get more to a model when you have all these different data that's collected, how you can shape that more into a model kind of figure, right? Is that a...
Let me try.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, great.
I wasn't there yet. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Indeed, my name is Renzo Akkerman. I'm from Wageningen University as one of the key partners in AMS, as was previously described. So I'm from a group called Operations Research and Logistics. Most of us under that label are sort of half mathematician, half economist. So we do a lot of mathematical modeling of, for instance, logistics systems or even logistics within a factory, doing the productions around the logistics around production lines. But it's a lot of modeling, often based on mathematics, and a very also significant economic focus in these models. So I wanted to briefly talk to you about what I then understand to be logistics. I don't want to be the sort of the standard academic who only has definitions, but I briefly want to give you a bit of sort of what I at least interpret, of how I interpret logistics, what kind of decisions we're talking about, and talk a bit about the different ways that we are using data. So that following up on some of the data we've seen, we can dig a bit further into that. And then I also wanted to give you a bit of an example on when you think about metropolitan solutions and logistics, there's quite a lot of examples of people who've been trying to develop urban consolidation centers, and I'll get back to that in a bit. And then I want to give you a couple of examples on that and why they actually work or not work in some cases. But logistics, and this is sort of the definition part that I'll get it over with soon. But this is I think relevant to realize we're talking about getting the right product at the right location in the right volume and at the right time. That's sort of what we are talking about when we're talking about logistics. And we were talking a lot in the previous presentation about locations. So and with the data from the transport companies, maybe also a bit about the volumes and the timing. How often do we actually? But this the exact some of the volumes and the timing that's also quite relevant here. And if we're talking about logistics and food, and then this is normally sort of what I then heretically like to say is sort of the holy trinity of food supply chains. That you're talking also about quality, safety, and sustainability. So you want to, next to the right location and the right time, you also want to make sure you have the right quality of the product available at the right time. And obviously you have to make sure that you are ensuring food safety. And especially when you think about food logistics and food distribution, there's a lot of sustainability discussions that play a role. That has to do with the sustainability considerations that go into food choices. So the fact that we might not like to get our food very far away, we might like to get it from nearby because that reduces the carbon footprint. But also aspects like food waste in a sort of logistics system. And all the food products we use create a quite large environmental impact that we are also trying to avoid. And so that is next to the product location, volume, and timing. The quality aspects and the sustainability aspects are, I think, also a key part of, say, food logistics. But in the end, what we're trying to do, and this, I don't have to, I can actually point like this, what we're trying to do is matching supply with demand in one way or another, and that also includes reverse flows. And we talked a little bit about the circular economy at the end of the last presentation. And if we have waste streams, organic material, food waste, then often that also leads to not only the logistics from the supply side to the demand side, but also logistic streams that might go back. And then what's of course interesting is that this is not one point, and this is one point. This is of course our cities, lots of different points, and the supply, maybe that's these farmers that were located all the way around Amsterdam. Maybe that's what we see as the supply, but maybe this is also a larger scale network. And in the end, we want to prevent the picture that we used on the website, that matching supply and demand looks like this all the time. That's what we don't want. And then we make a lot of decisions when we look at these logistics networks, and that to me starts with the design. So where do we? This is more sort of long-term decisions. Where do we choose to source our food products from? And where do we locate these logistics hubs? We saw clearly on one of the maps that where there was a cluster in Amsterdam where a lot of this happens. But we also make decisions on what type of transport we're using. So are we putting in the future a lot of this transport on the water in Amsterdam, or is it electric vehicles? How are we doing these flows? So this is all, say, deciding on the infrastructure. And if we have that infrastructure, we still have to decide on how to actually do that, how often, where, exactly something needs to be? Can I combine some things in a truck if I have two restaurants close to each other in the end? What transportation routes are used, and is that an area where I will allow trucks all the time, or maybe certain times of the day I am also not allowing certain traffic to happen? So that also plays an important role in this respect. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about analytics. So we were talking before a lot about doing different kinds of analysis, and there's several different levels on which you can do that. And I think this is also maybe an interesting basis to keep in mind when we're later talking about what can we use data for and what kind of data do we need. But what we can basically distinguish is the sort of the starting point on trying to describe what happened. What data do we have? Can we describe what happened? Based on that, can we do some kind of diagnosis? Why did something happen? Based on that, can we then also predict what will happen? And based on some of these interactive maps, we saw, okay, maybe we can also look at different scenarios, change some of the inputs, and then see, okay, how would that then look? And then in the end, and that's something that in our group in Wageningen we actually focus on most of the time. So how can we then make it happen or make things better? How can we redesign also a network? So if you're thinking about the routes that transport takes throughout the city, or the type of vehicles that are used, and maybe also in different times of the day, or the locations of certain hubs, do we still want this big hub, or do we want multiple smaller hubs, or do we want mobile hubs, so larger trucks that are acting as a hub from which you have then smaller food flows happen going to the restaurant. So this is more the I don't know, and also the modeling of scenarios for the future and evaluating those. That more on the how can we make things happen. So we're prescribing how we would like to see things in the future. So in a way, we're going from having information to understanding that, to creating some kind of expectations, to optimizing the food system that we have, or that we would like to have. And if I look at this, then I say, okay, the higher we get on this staircase, the more value our analysis would have. The problem is, of course, that it's not becoming easier if you move up to this staircase. For me, that means it's not easier. Normally, also means more interesting as a researcher. So that's why we tend to also lean towards that end of the staircase. But this is, I think, an interesting framework to have in mind. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about more sort of city logistics, and then specifically urban consolidation centers as an example of a logistics scenario that we can look at in trying to redesign these food flows. And I have to also give credit to some of my colleagues here that also did most of this work. And there's quite a lot of discussions about city logistics. There's a couple of problems that people are trying to solve. And there's pollution when you talk about a lot of traffic movements. There's hindrance, all the sort of the loading, unloading, and the trucks are being around in the city. And then that bit related to that, obviously, that it also leads to congestion. And then you can think about solutions. If pollution, there's also legislation on norms that if you try to stick below certain, say, caps on CO2 emissions or whatever kind of regulation you can think of. So you could say, okay, that some cities might introduce sort of a low emission zone, or there's some other environmental sort of agreements on what is and is not possible, or there's time windows. Maybe I will only allow certain traffic into the city in the morning between certain hours, or I'm restricting from loading or unloading possibilities. Or I'm looking at also at the technical solutions for the traffic flow, and not allow anybody to just go in and out of the city all the time. And that you can also group some of those. That some of these are all a bit linked to limiting possibilities in terms of the geographical area or the timing, and quite a lot of these aspects, they come back if you look at this urban consolidation center thing. And I definitely want to say that I know it's not my purpose in this talk to try and convince you that this is the solution for everything. We're also here to critically look at these type of solutions, and that's also what we then did. The idea of these urban consolidation center, you might have heard about this or not, but is that you try to consolidate these logistics flows of food into the city. So trying to reduce the number of vehicles you have, increase the load of the vehicles that are there, the lower the amount of deliveries that you would have in two locations or in streets. So we're consolidating transport movements, we're increasing coordination of the deliveries, and usually there's then also considerations about what type of vehicles you would be using. And maybe you want to focus on electricity then on this in this consolidated transport flows. So that's sort of the main idea of these consolidation centers. If you start looking into that, the experiences are quite mixed. There's a lot of these initiatives. There are significant reductions in emissions if you look at the results of these. But if you look at the operations and also the financial side of things, there's only a few that are actually operationally, financially sound, and that has a lot to do with, and I'll get back to that. That there has to be a reason to do this, and because just the consolidation of flows, and the idea that would be more efficient if you combine that is often not sufficient, because you also have a lot of additional activities in the consolidation of these flows, and so this often only makes sense if you connect it with other solutions, and there's a lot more different parties involved, and also that has to do with policy making and legislation, and that's I'll get back to the legislation in a bit. I wanted to give you a few examples, and there were two quite interesting examples in Italy. One in Parma, where there was something called the Eco City Food Hub, where the driver was also, okay, we would like to reduce the environmental impacts of all these traffic flows, but also, I know you're talking about old medieval cities, where the road infrastructure was also just not able to cope with all this transport. So there's also a bit of an infrastructure limitation that is then a driving force behind this type of initiative. And one of the key things is that from the municipality, there was a decision to restrict the truck movements in the city. So there's restrictions in terms of the timing or the type of vehicles, and that the Eco City initiative, when you think about the Urban Consolidation Center, they got an exemption from these type of regulations. So they, if you think about the economics behind it, they had a significant competitive advantage because they would not have to follow some of these extra permits or these extra considerations, which then means that a lot of people who need to have food transported will go through these consolidation centers. So there's quite a lot of participants, and in the end, I know then the goal of emissions reduction was also there. Similar story for Padua, where the driver was mostly environmental, but it's also an old medieval city, right, where in terms of space and congestion, there's issues, and so they have sort of a low emission zone. in the city center, where there was especially a lot of concern about the time aspect related to the delivery, so restrictions on weekdays between 10 and 12. And that in the beginning was kicked off with some subsidies to subsidize the vehicles used by this consolidation center, and that later on was profitable enough to add additional fleet from their own generated money, and that I know you have sort of similar size, but even larger emission reductions. And what I think here is also interesting is that in both of these cases you see that it's a collaborative effort. So here in both cases the municipality was involved, but on this side it was one of the larger sort of fresh food wholesalers that was also helping in setting up this infrastructure, and on the sort of the Padua example, it was a logistics provider that collaborated in setting up this urban consolidation center. And so some of the success factors, if you then not only from these examples but also look at more examples, and so there's the you have to make sure that you have a suitable location for these things. There's a private stakeholder also involved in running this, and that often is also the main factor behind the fact that you have sort of experience with logistics and supply chains, and the support by the local government, and this the access restrictions for the city center turned out to be one of the also the key driving factors in the examples where this worked, because then, like I said, then there is quite a big force for people to then go through this consolidation center, and then to be able to get their products into the city, and in a way that does have the sort of the competition that then favors the consolidation, and there's a collaborative aspect, and before people jump into that, you have to make sure that it's not just agreements for the next 3 weeks. All right, so I probably went way over my time already. So if I did, I was sorry about that. So finally, re-emphasizing a bit sort of the descriptive to diagnostic to predictive to prescriptive analytics, these different stages of utilizing data, analyzing data, and from just describing it to actually using it to improve an infrastructure or a food system. And then I know important question here, what data do we then have and what data do we need? That's something that all of us can follow up on a bit in the interactive part that we're getting to relatively soon. Mixed experience with this example I gave in terms of urban consolidation centers, and that illustrates that I know, coming up with a good logistics solution is not straightforward. In addition to this example that I've now been using, you can also think a bit more about the circular economy that we mentioned earlier, and that we have, and that's I think is very interesting when you look at the circular economy, that you have a lot of these reverse flows, and that would come back from us as citizens or from stores, or very small scale, or that tends to be the case, and that makes it maybe even harder than the flows into the city. And that I don't have the time to dig further into that, but maybe some of you have heard about the physical internet as well, where there's thoughts on how can we install a logistics system that would work like the internet, where if I send an email, I just dump it into the internet and then it arrives in your inbox, and how it gets there, we don't care, right? It goes through some server somewhere, but no, you're getting it. And so the idea of physical internet is also a bit, okay, how could we also have a logistics infrastructure where if some products needs to go somewhere, that we just dump it in a system somewhere, and then it finds an efficient routing by itself, and that's a very long-term perspective and hard to set up, but it's sometimes helpful to think about that as a point in the future where you would ideally like to go. I think that was roughly what I proper scientist references. And that was it for my contribution for now, and I look forward to discussing this further.
Thank you, Renzo. I got very curious about this physical internet. Too bad we don't have that much time for it. Yeah, no, that's very fascinating. Any questions before we continue? Yes. You could please tell us your name.
Hi, my name is Katharina, and I'm a student, but I also work at Taste Before You Waste, the NGO. Maybe you've heard of it. And my main concern was when you said we would have, or small, like less deliveries. That would mean that the deliveries would have to be larger, of larger volume, quantity. And my main thought was, what would that, what's the impact then on food waste? Because usually if you have higher volume deliveries in food, you have more food waste, meaning even if you have fewer vehicles delivering food, you have more deliveries, vehicles in there taking food out that's wasted. So, yeah, I was just concerned about that. Great, thanks. Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. I was wondering, thank you. I was wondering, do you have data on the Italian cities? Because they had reduction in CO2, but is there any data on, did their food waste go up, maybe, as a result? Right. Inflow. Okay, cool. Okay, thank you.
I think that's also like one of the main things of the research that you are working on now, just to combine all those different layers. Because if you just only look at one, you can't forget the other ones, because it's all interrelated, it's all connected, and it all influences each other. So I think that's the research that is going on right now is actually trying to make those kind of connections that you are mentioning right now, to include all the different kind of aspects. So yeah, thank you so much for your contribution. Very good perspective. I had another question or comment. Yeah.
My name is Peter. Something missing so far, because we have been talking about distribution, logistics to restaurants, to shops, to supermarkets, but an increasing flow of distribution is going directly to households nowadays, and also other non-food items are being increasingly. I mean, my neighborhood is sometimes clogged up with all the different delivery services for food and non-food items. Is this part of the analysis of, or?
Consolidation center for households. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. I have one last question before we continue.
Thank you. My name is Sandra. Can you tell me, maybe there's also some knowledge about the volumes, example of drinks and fresh food and ja, houdbaar eten, zeg maar. Yeah. So because it also has to do with the quality and the other thing, the health issues, no, the safety issues. So maybe there's data from the, or
We can. I just go there.
Yeah, because I know you're making the distinction between also perishable and non-perishable products. I think that's very interesting, right? Because especially if we're talking about perishable products, then we also see that before I joined Wageningen, I had a unit, and there we were working with a bakery at some point. They had some kind of central processing facility, but I think they had 6 delivery runs per day or 7 to the individual bakery, right? Because that's also, we're talking about highly perishable products, and this is also usually well-established bakery, so they would definitely be quality of that stuff, right? So the shelf life you're talking about are really short, but that also means that this is not so about volume yet, because I realize that except for the fact that they're going down because we're replenishing bakery stores 6 times per day. Lower volumes, higher frequency. That's probably not what we want, but because it has
it's not so detailed level of knowledge or of database of it's not exactly right.
Yeah. 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 Yep. Come here because nobody at home can hear you. If you tell the people who you are, because
My name is Kees Willem Rademakers, also from the Applied University of Sciences, and I do my research in food logistics and especially hospitality distribution. So looking at the horeca in Amsterdam. And this question you just asked is the hot topic, the hot potato in the room, because nobody knows what exactly the volumes are for all the horeca distribution. But we do have a few trends. For example, that the amount of delivery to horeca is increasing just as the amount of horeca places. So we get more and more logistics concerning food logistics. And meanwhile, the volumes per delivery are getting down because of the commercialization of the food logistics. So horeca
because of all the delivery,
they order more times a week with smaller amounts of goods. So that's a thing. And right now we are not only looking at the wholesalers that deliver the food, but also at the horeca places themselves to ask them, why do you deliver and what do you order every day or every week to get to your shop? And that is for the most of the horeca places, there's not like all Chinese restaurants order like this or all Michelin star restaurants order like that. It's very diverse, and it's very difficult to make a categorization and to get averages. So the averages that were presented today is were averages of the total horeca places in the Pijp in Amsterdam, and then they say an average distance between the wholesaler and the delivery address is about 20 kilometers. The average amount of deliveries a week is around 15. The average volume is maybe between 3 and 8 roll cages. And there you start again, 3 and 8 roll cages. That's a very big difference. The most, not the wholesalers, but the suppliers, they deliver around 1 or 2 stops in the Pijp area before they go out to another part of the city. But the Bitfood or the Hanos, they deliver maybe 20 roll cages in 20 stops in the Pijp district. So it's so diverse and so dispersed, it's very difficult to say something about it with averages. We really need real-time data, and that's what we like to get from you tonight. What are the possibilities to get that real-time data?
I'm actually, because you raised your hand when I asked who works for the municipality, right, or not? No, I'm curious to see what is your interest in. Why do you want the data to be more specific? Is that something that the municipality is looking for, or is it just a question that popped up in your mind, or what is your motivation to ask this question?
I'm not here because of the municipality.
No.
My
You're your own person.
Yes, yeah, right. So don't ask me this question, please.
Okay, I won't. Right. Maybe later in the bar. Huh? Okay, we're gonna continue. Thank you, Renzo. Give him a warm thank you. All right, so we're now starting the second part, and like I said, what we're gonna do is we're gonna ask you all to divide yourselves. You can choose where you want to sit. Every table has a different theme. So as was explained before by Melika, it's such a complex system. It's related to so many different kind of challenges. Let's see if with all of us we can brainstorm and maybe get a little bit further in some specific themes within this bigger, broader topic. So we are going to look on one hand at this question of mobility and transport that was just explained also by Renzo. We're going to look at the waste side of the story, so I think that will be very interesting for you. We're also going to look at how the city of Amsterdam is growing and a lot of new houses are being built, and how can you look at this issue of circularity and logistics if thinking about the thousands of extra homes that are being built and the impact that has on how we can incorporate this development within this broader picture of the food system. And we're going to look at this issue of health. So the last point. So how can we design space to make more healthy choices, to make that people make more healthy choices. So at each table are going to be two experts. Some of them you've already seen here, others are still undercover in the room. Because those different themes are so different, just to make it a bit more concrete, we're going to give you one example, which is very close by, Marineterrein, just at the other side of the railroad. This is an area that's going to be redeveloped very intensively, and just to sort of spark your imagination, there are other locations in the city, of course. Havenstad, which was already mentioned before, is still going to be built. But just to think about, okay, if you have an example like that, how do you connect, or how do you not connect with those different themes of health, of waste, of mobility, of circularity, and what kind of things do you need to think about? What kind of challenges does such a place face, and also what kind of data do you need to go about it, and what kind of data is still missing? Just to give you a very brief introduction, I'm not sure if everybody's as familiar with Marineterrein. We're going to get just a short speech by the technology strategist at the Marineterrein, Herman Wachter. Herman, I don't see you. There you are. So please come forward, give him a warm applause. And Herman, please introduce us to your world.
Okay. This is not the Marineterrein. We would love to have that much vegetables. The Marineterrein. Who's been there? A lot of you haven't been there. It was a good place to be today. It was bikini weather. We could see a lot of people relaxing of the space, and that's one of the nice things. To get back, it's owned by the national government. It's not owned by the city of Amsterdam. There is discussions about that going on. There's a development team to develop that. This is 12 hectares, which is about 30 acres in non-metric systems of prime area. So there are millions of plans to do something with that area, and everybody has an idea how to make money with the real estate. However, the approach of the central government and the city of Amsterdam, who commissioned us to do the development, is to do something special with the space. It's such a extraordinary piece of land. And if you was there today, you could feel the impression there. Such a good location in the center that the central idea is to get something out of it, which is more than one thing, more than just homes. Homes are extremely important, but it's just homes, or just businesses, or anything else. The central idea is to create an innovation hub, and our task is how do you do this? This is much more than bricks and with spatial development. It's about an ecosystem of people developing ideas. So how do you get the most out of it? It's by combining innovation, because we all need that for the city and for the Netherlands and for the world, on 3 levels. First of all, products and technology, but to add that on innovation in how people develop themselves. That's why Codan is here in Amsterdam, AMS is there. And the 3rd level is how do we organize ourselves as society. And if you combine the 3 things, you get the most out of it. If you focus on things that are valid and essential for a city in the city center. It makes no sense to have the invoice department of Facebook there, or something which is a lab just for gene editing. You can do that everywhere. So the big question is always, what creates the most value, and why here? And the answer is, it's about these kind of questions which are essential for a city to thrive and to innovate. Climate, healthy living, how to do the logistics when more and more of our food, we want better food, fresh food, everyday food, creates a lot of impact on what we do. E-commerce, 1 package for 20 days, food every day. We need that every day. Creates a lot of things how to deal with that. So our main challenge is to not to have thinkers, but to design, act, try out, and learn from that and scale up. So the invitation is also on data, but also to how can we create basic examples to do that. We have a blue-green roof. It's not new. The only thing new is it's been measured. And it shows fantastic advantages in terms of capturing water and creating space. The second idea that came up was, oh, blue-green roof on the top. It's a park down there. Let's add that to the open space. The third phase is, oh, we can grow food there quickly. And some people are doing it in the city, using it growing food. So doing acting creates a lot of new ideas and innovations how to use that. And our invitation to everybody is come with good ideas where we can act, do, in trying out something. There's something like qualified self, which is measuring what you do in terms of sports to improve yourself, but also how to involve people to do sports, and so on, and so on, and so on. So the main thing I want to bring to you is, if you go to the Marineterrein the next time or think about it, is it's one of the few open spaces, redeveloped spaces in the city center where you can try out, act out new things for cities, which are people from all over the world are coming to look. The simple things we do, because we're doing it on the Marineterrein, and there's open a space to do something which is different because it's a private space. Talk is transformed to action and to learn, and that's what we absolutely love.
Thank you, Herman. But I have one question. Can you come back? I'm just curious, like these kind of issues that we're going to discuss now with the group. Are those issues that you are worried about? Is it something
these four were exactly, they could be copied from our manifesto, so to speak. So one of the things we're saying is these the demand for open space and quietness and something where you're not bullied by cars, so to speak, is so big in cities. What happens if you try to create that? And then you run into millions of issues of amazed about how many people need to come to the train by car or anything else. And that's not, there are very unobvious things. And one of the things we measured is actually that food delivery is currently already one of the biggest, because there are many people coming, many people meetings, you need food. So,
exactly.
So how do you do that if you want to minimize the movements on the train itself?
No, but because I'm curious specifically for Marineterrein. If you look, for example, at the logistics, there's a big wall around it, but you also have water. So there are many different kind of options. So I think we could get quite creative with thinking with this specific area.
It's all a microcosm where everything is happening. So it's small, but it's got everything you can encounter in a city.
Okay, thank you. We're going to continue because otherwise we will not have enough time to hear from all of you. So I'm gonna tell you which table is what, and then you can decide yourselves. Do it a bit organically, so not everybody sit at the same table and leave one person alone at the other, but try to sort of spread yourselves out in an even way. I'm just gonna decide what is what. This table is going to look at mobility and logistics. This one, the one in the back. Do we need a specific one in the back? Which one you want? Okay, so the logistics is there. Sorry, so we start again. The logistics mobility one is there. The circular waste table is here. On building the houses and circularity is there. And then we have that about health we do here. So mobility, waste, building, health. Spread around, and the people at the table will explain the next phase. Wij kennen elkaar.
Logistics.
Ben ik een chief? Oké.
Yes, thank you for that. All of these things are here. Okay, we start with a small introduction. The rules. Are there any rules? Well, the rules is come up with creative. This is
Well, then we have like, so the idea is
we are now located here. Pakhuis.
circular and everything, but I okay, what is
So that makes it a very interesting living thing. So this is the circular
Marineterrein, Havenstad,
and not only of course, but and otherwise now this is so cool. Also
housing, but housing, well, I think we should say space development, because it's not only housing.
Yeah, so what could be done?
Preferably not, we have like to have more mixed areas at the moment of time. So what do you think are
the red line is database data. Within
I'll give a very brief, just inspirational presentation. It's really brief. Linked to two projects. One is the repair project that we are currently doing. Also working with large
you can imagine there's
the Amsterdam case,
many things you actually enable or
how can we move
so
resources? How where we are building
inside maybe for me as a researcher to know about
what we start with is making basically an analysis of the state of what is currently happening in the region of Amsterdam generation of food. First, just basically what is happening, where does it happen, where is it generated, what is it, where does it go? And the next stage is then, okay, why does that happen and where can we intervene in the system?
well, this is now just for us to have
another project is the
something to speak about. We take it as an example to resolve more
which is all about
give examples of another place or things that more problems with that. Yes, you have a lot of knowledge actually about
what I
how
want to do is just look at
specific
the
place. Maybe can
upstream.
inform
Talk about foods, but there's a lot of questions, of course, why do we need food? How much food do we need per capita? How much food is produced per capita? Is that more or just enough for us? Or basically that all around the roots is too much. There's 2,700 calories per head is foreseen where we need only 2,000. For instance, so that's something like where does that come from? That's a question that you can ask upstream before even we start. When you produce food, the question is where do you get the ingredients?
they come from all over the world, which is currently the case, and also in food, it's a global market. And this we developed really briefly for the municipality of Havenstad, just making a hamburger that people like to eat, kids like to eat, it speaks to kids. This was particularly for children. But then made from local products, from local grains and local residue grains from agricultural lands. And also onions, tomatoes made on silt ground. So salty groundwater that provides a different kind of soil for growing vegetables. You don't know exactly how to do it. We were just in the initial stage of starting to learn how to do saline groundwater and saline soils. Another thing is that the consequence means because Schiphol has to do with a lot of birds in the air. There's a lot of bird strikes, planes hit birds, and it's dangerous. So what they do, they don't want these birds around the airport, so they shoot them or they make a certain form of land use like miscanthus. They grow there, and birds don't like to forage. So that are ideas. Here they thought that we can shoot the birds, but at least we should valorize it. We should eat them. We should know what we're doing, and we should be transparent. So that's one example of dealing with. Of course, it's not. There's no packaging. That's another thing. How do you package? Exactly. If you then look downstream, then this is what's happening to this guy. Looks a little bit sad, and I know why. Because this has to go to the dump. This is what happens a lot downstream. We go upstream again. We look at the municipality of Aeres. This is the arable land in yellow. And the piece that you see here in red is basically the carbohydrate equivalent that is needed for years consumption of carbohydrates in Schiphol. So you can see that annually this production land is required for the whole of Schiphol. Now that's an interesting thought experiment. So how can we provide local production to the Schiphol area, which currently, strangely, just doesn't really happen. Schiphol has a normal linear kind of system of getting food from everywhere, a little bit locally. They don't have a particular liaison with their local suppliers, which is very important. Especially if you know that land is there. Now, if we go downstream, and this one comes from repair, then you can see, for instance, on the neighborhood level, or this is municipality level, where which type of food waste is generated. So this is avoidable food waste. There's an avoidable type, unavoidable type. I'm not going into that now. Food waste collected as residual waste. So it's just the bulk waste that people throw in one bag. And part of the fragment of that is food waste. You can see where it comes from. And here you can see which local waste plant is basically processing organic waste flows from which land. So this already gives a certain notion of transport routes. Where does the organic waste come from? Where does it go to? And then what happens to it? In this particular case, the Mirla food system. Downstream again, how do you process the food waste? If you do it in a very smart way, you look at the value that's still left in the food waste. There's a certain value pyramid or value hierarchy, starting from pharmaceutical and medical use to feed and food, and then going down to bioplastics, to bulk chemicals, and to energy. So energy in the end has the least value. But what we see that a lot of organic waste actually ends up in waste incinerator. So the only thing we do get from it is energy, is heat. And that's the lowest quality. Now, what's interesting here, this is downstream, but you can also think of, and this is actually one of the solution routes that, as a group within repair, a group of stakeholders, they came up with. What if we use this as a starting point, as upstream, before we decide what kind of food comes into a certain area, we start with the waste. What comes back from it, which value? So what kind of food do we actually want to have? And how do we want to separate it? How do we want to collect it? How do we want to process it? Based on this hierarchy. So that could be an interesting way of looking at the food that goes around in an area, a city or a neighborhood, and that's the last slide, I think. So it's basically about that coupling downstream and upstream. And currently that's not done. It's a linear way. Upstream it's produced, it's packaged, goes into a system, whatever the system is, and it's output in waste. And it's being disposed, sometimes treated in a very high value way, in a high utility way, by making certain chemicals out of it. Most of the time it's just being turned into soil improver, which is also very valuable because that improves local land. But there are all sorts of things to think about. Okay, so how can we build systems of the values that you get out of food waste back into that area, for instance, for soil improver or for organic feedstock for it's currently fossil-based chemical industry, bioplastics. So there's all sorts of ways to think about how to valorize that. That is indeed putting the accent on waste, but going back to the upstream side, you should never prevent food to be necessary for them. So there's that whole systemic view with all these different aspects. And I think we can start from there and look at the Marineterrein. So how does that work like a Marineterrein? And maybe you should take it from here.
What's necessary in that time?
How we can project these kind of notions.
And also,
you were saying like, well, maybe there was some first question or reaction on this information. Is it new or
volume,
does it go to insights or is it
if you compare it to any also which is
linear?
a package of and you threw a grid, one study grid.
But also therefore,
so that's better. In food, it's being diverse.
but really in that can change the amount of
the years of the development affects the system.
I'm back in England and
Now the biggest consumer of
how do you feel like and then they what size and where they go to this place and then you might not be able to call your interested
the biggest volume.
You might be more likely because we don't have that shop with low advertising and for the green
You can see how they are.
That's very hard to incorporate
daily structures by value
I don't think
more than one function.
in general,
Just about how as an individual
they are
that's good. I think we should always approach it from being a
smaller retailers and all the more important to focus on that because
briefly I didn't introduce myself. AMS Institute.
know a bit what they do and it's not that way of
Okay. Marine.
for example, smaller retailers, cafes,
very interesting development. Well, as Herman just introduced. So we are
they go
here,
by themselves with their car, little lamps to the biking area.
and currently it's other locations is now gradually
They generate a lot of traffic. And they're probably bigger area to
surrounded by water.
everything is very close by.
And still
That's the reason
around
that's
it.
like that.
And there are two entrances.
The policy is food sector you can only buy at
Oh, yeah.
It's
hard to
this part.
make it they're running extra
Okay, so we're looking at the as a curve.
Yeah. So this is as a group. There are already now some plans.
Yes, of course, it makes a difference.
But
I don't
if you allow people to have a market
most of it are free.
you buy
Make it circular.
Yeah, but therefore I think it's important to have an understanding where you heading to, it creates so traffic flows to that area. And especially one hotel extra or less, it makes different. You already now food is one of the most biggest deliveries. So
we need a
think about change that system. For example, also what makes a difference is how the space is available for storage in restaurants, for shops, because the prices are so high for floors. People are tend to say, well, we have less and less room for that, and therefore, if you want to change it, maybe that can be a key. Yeah, and so you can also say as a principle, well, if you have shops here, yes, or we only have it with that amount of space for storage, because then you know you can have deliveries per week.
For a long time, I had some because you are going to
What exactly?
other areas.
That's a lot of
Pilot project, what are the less experience?
if we have 30 miles
Discuss with you currently if we have certain
Well, no, that's just how it's used.
it's very good.
Or, yeah, I mean, there is
coming up, which volume is coming in. And then if it's organic, then you decide to try
Oh, really? Okay.
It's going on the mouth.
this would be really
They do have security to get in and out.
Yeah, so then, yeah, of course, because if you want to cover the
There's a difference between
how to do that. What is the highest? But it's good for your environment. Steer a little bit. It will not be top down. Yeah, okay, but I mean, because you can say the emission rates, this area has to be completely autonomous. For instance, a topic area. Then we can project our ideas. We should say, well, we need really large amounts of annual land, either being on the ground floor of buildings or infrastructure or vertical or the water. We need it there. Then the other areas are all ways. We all think that we will have utilized the same areas because we can't export. And then you have
yeah, and then also the spatial consequences, because of course it's a very narrow part, but large electric vehicles and electric vehicles come with area. Questions about what about the size of our roads? Why is it that they're too small? Actually, if bikes become larger, because they become kind of fence effect. So we need adaptable. Again, you need adaptable safety. And what do you need to know?
Most likely all the buildings were connected also underground.
And maybe it's also
circulate. So in a way, circulation underground doesn't have light. You grow without light sponges.
So that would be interesting also
in a way that
whether our data can
first gets there. Always there it goes further. Maybe it doesn't.
And then
it's not just if you the environment without actually having to say that okay,
actually data that can support us to decide find the right solution, the right
and I think it's fascinating the fact that
they want to be
quite
if you want to make it applicable or generic, then you have to make it an average. Then you prefer trying to get it you'll find out that it's not going to work. Resolve as well. Possible you manage to produce 5 or 6 daily that is that something.
Yeah, because for example we have those
okay, we do need more land locally if that is what we want. Unless we say no, we clearly don't want to do that because we're going to go there.
So that they
food production is very
it's for fresh part, but then you can think, okay, carrots. At the same time, you may also say it's not that interesting to see these artists. Maybe small onions doesn't help in one pot. It makes it not more efficient, more sustainable.
We don't have this evidence,
the problem with rooftop gardens is that if you don't go up there, eventually,
Yeah, so that is the data, I think, and you're also trying to set knowledge about what that means or what is involved there. Also, integrating your current agricultural use and potential use of agricultural land. Because of course you can't say to you have mangoes or potatoes, but not everything possible on land. So you think about what type of land you have, and then you can think about what could be then well, now, for me, I think it is not this outwardly thing at science, which you say forget about it. It's so ideal for distance better. True, because always you can't take this place, okay, we're outside, there's other neighborhoods, so it doesn't tell me that it's always takes in the area, and not the next city that didn't wasn't following calculation. So it's more interesting to see how they
Hello, hello, hello. I'm gonna be very mean to you all because you're having such pleasant conversations, but time is almost up, and I would really, really love to get some feedback back from all of the different tables. So could everybody please give the attention back to me, Bob? I'm calling out your name. So thank you all. It's been short, but there's a bar downstairs, so everybody can continue talking. So don't lose sight of each other. I'm very curious just to get it sort of share with each other. Maybe all of the tables can just give one, like the most exciting or inspiring idea, or the most difficult kind of issue that you came up with together. What is the thing that made you think most? I'm just gonna walk past every table and give somebody the honor of reflecting back. If there's somebody at the table who really, really wants to do it, let me know, because otherwise I will just pick someone. I'm gonna start at this one. This is the table of healthcare. I'm gonna choose you. Can you let us know? Can you maybe close the door? Can you let us know what was the? I don't exactly know what kind of conversation you had, but what is the thing that you would like to share most with the rest of the group?
Thank you very much. My name is Jorantje Makkenbach, and we were talking here about like the food system in Amsterdam and its impact on health. And we were first talking about the kind of data you would need to get a better idea of how the food system actually has an influence on health. And we were thinking that if you talk about obesity, that you shouldn't only have information on the food environment, but maybe also on the physical activity environment, because maybe people balance their hamburger consumption with cycling for an hour, for example. So that was one of the insights, that you maybe need data like that. Maybe data on poverty, because there's a large discrepancy in health between poorer and richer people. And in terms of what you could actually do as a city to improve the health of the citizens via the food system, we were thinking that maybe it would be good to involve citizens in deciding on what kind of food retailers they would like in their neighborhood. And also that you have to be careful that if you try to improve your neighborhood, that that doesn't lead to, for example, a rise in the housing prices, and then you actually push the poor, unhealthy. Yeah. So that was a very short summary of what we discussed.
Directly showing the complexity of all the different factors involved. Who here? I have a volunteer. And then I'm going to tell you, please keep it brief, because the volunteers always like to talk very long. Okay?
I try to keep it brief. Three important points. First of all, with all our models and research, we look at the logistics of today, but we don't know how logistics of the future will look like. So when we start to design new logistical schemes for the Marineterrein, we think the most biggest advantage is we can start at the start. So there is nothing yet. So when we design the logistics systems, we can say, for example, to new shop owners or hospitality companies, say, if you come here, you have to join collective purchasing schemes, and you should share your data. And it can go as far as at your delivery dock, you can put sensors there that measure all the goods that come out of trucks. So that's very cool. And the third one is, that's the obvious one, use delivery by water. And that's very expensive, but somehow we should make that business case work.
Okay, thank you. This table, do I have a volunteer? Yeah?
So this table we talked about spatial development, and we've talked about two design principles that are en vogue right now. One is the idea of creating kind of oases in cities, so areas in which people say, well, there shouldn't be much traffic within that space because it should be a nice space to live and recreate and be, and around there will be more the traffic. And then if we have such a design principle, it's very important to have enough knowledge, data, information, insights to find the right level or size for such oasis. And we can see Marineterrein is like such an oasis because it's like an isle actually, with only 2 places, I think, where you can enter. 3, a few only. And another design principle or idea is now that we should have more hubs for energy or food or water or whatever. And also here, with the idea that you have to have decentralized solutions for specific spaces, because every neighborhood, every place in a city is different. Okay, that's a nice idea, but what scale should it be? Again, we didn't come really to the point what exact data then you need, but that we need insights to find the right scale for solutions like that. Mm-hmm. And then furthermore, we said, one thing related specifically to food is that we have to think about the seasonality of demand. So maybe the logistics and what we need might be very different from time, depending on time in the year, whether we need fresh strawberries or that we are more into eating hutspot all the time. And also changes in these preferences. So we used to eat quite seasonality, season vegetables, and maybe that changes quickly. We don't know, and that's also related to future logistics and demands. So, and last principle then is, I said I would have 2, but it is 3, I think. Then in the end, it's all about being flexible, adaptable modality in your spatial development.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Last but not least, you, Arjen?
Yeah.
You gonna do it?
I must say I was amazed about the knowledge we had on the table here. Very specialized about food waste. First, we had a beautiful presentation by Bob of the repair project, and his approach is also you have this valorization pyramid, which you should use to define your definition. To steer this discussion, it was still the program, the urban program of the Marineterrein. We were still looking in what kind of program is going to be developed, and based on that you can analyze how much food you need and how much food you maybe can produce on the location. And not only do it in basements and stuff, but really show it that people can see what you eat in order to stimulate to make healthy choices.
But and how does that relate to the waste? do you also want to show the waste more visibly, or like?
Yeah, because what you can do, of course, if you have this food waste, you can valorize it into soil improvers in order to improve the public space to use it for food production.
Yeah.
So it's like a circular model. But yeah, it depends what your ambitions are for your area.
Yeah, great. Thank you all so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your insights. We're at the end. The time is up. I want to say an extra thank you to all the people who gave a presentation and all the people who have added some extra steering and expertise at the several tables. Big thank you to the HVA and AMS, of course. And I would like to invite all of you to go downstairs, have a drink, and keep on discussing this issue, because as complex as it is, we can continue for many more hours to see and find some new solutions. Please come back also to Pakhuis Zwijger. There are a couple of events coming up. We're showing some here, but there's a bunch of it online. You can also select only for English events if you are an English speaker. And this event is for free and will be for free. But if you want to support us, you can make a donation online. Thank you very much.